All right, we are into our last week, May 1st through the 6th, on social networking and emerging technology. And those are just the last two chapters of the textbook, I believe, that you need to read. So textbook chapters 25 and 26, and then you'll complete the task-centered learning project. So remember, in this project, you have to introduce a tool and discuss how it works, and then introduce the concept of task-centered learning. And of course, this one's an important concept. I've written quite a bit about it, and so I want to talk to you about some of the pitfalls that students have with this. So you're going to introduce the elements of task-centered learning, including learning tasks and so forth, and then discuss a learning task that could incorporate that tool and how the other elements of task-centered learning could work with that tool. And so this assignment is allowed in different ways. You can do a podcast or recorded presentation of about 6 to 10 minutes in length, or a paper of about 6 to 10 pages to talk about a tool and how it could be used in task-centered learning, and then I'll grade it using this rubric here. So it's a significant project, but I wanted to help you get started by talking a little bit about task-centered learning as well. And this is our last week of class, and so this is really the last assignment, and it's a big one. So just to take a look at some of the things that students do when they talk about task-centered learning, I wanted to give an intro to some of these items here. So let me pull this over. Okay, so this is a diagram that was in one of the articles that hopefully you read earlier in the semester. It talks about what task-centered learning is all about. And if you notice here, in the middle is the task. And what is a task? Well, it's hard to define, right? It's a whole bunch of different things. It's whatever students can do to apply their learning in a meaningful way. It's a real-world way of applying their learning. And so you have to find, or you have to be able to center learning on something that is real-world, that is not just a school task, but is something that someone might do outside of school, or similar to something that someone might do outside of school in a professional world. And you have to engage learners in a whole task, meaning that you can't just give them the task can't be a worksheet, for instance, or it can't be just a small 20-minute activity. It's got to be bigger than that. Kind of like a project in some ways. A project-based learning experience could be a task. And then the trick here is to have learners complete a progression of tasks. So they might do one task, and then they might do something that's a little bit more difficult and complete another task with that. And in their doing of these tasks, they are applying what they are learning through their experience. But that's only one element. It's the most important element of task-centered learning, but it's only one element. The other elements are that we activate. So under activation, we activate learners' cognitive structures prior to learning. So we remind them of what they know about the subject and help them to learn or acquire necessary cognitive structures, or necessarily, I guess, instead of cognitive structures, we might just say knowledge. They should know about things. We should demonstrate how to do the task. So students should be exposed to some kind of demonstration that shows them how the task is done and how the items that they are learning apply to the task. And this should be given to them in a couple of different ways. And then application. And that means that learners should be able to do the task themselves. The teacher can't do the task or show the task to them. That's demonstration. It has to be application too, where teachers actually allow students to try things out and then give them coaching and feedback on how well they're doing. And then integration is the last one, and that allows learners, or gives learners, a way to demonstrate their new knowledge and skill in a new and different way, beyond just what they have learned in the application to a certain task that the teacher has given them. Is there a way that they can explore it a little further and kind of use that in a new way? So those are the elements of task-centered learning. And some of the problems that students run into is maybe the tasks are not the focus. Maybe you're demonstrating a lot of things to students, or maybe you're doing application, allowing them to practice things, but it's not centered on a task really. But everything needs to be centered around this task. That's why it's here in the middle. So you have to come up with a task that's big enough that requires students to apply the knowledge and skill that you want them to learn to it. And one trick for doing this, or trick for choosing a task for students to follow or do, is to think about the subject that you want them to learn. Let's say it's a little something more advanced, like cellular reproduction. And so if you think about that subject of cellular reproduction, what's a task that someone might do that relates to that? Well, someone might have to maybe design an activity or create or do cellular reproduction or explain cellular reproduction. So that could be the task. But then you want to activate their cognitive structures in preparation for them explaining cellular reproduction back to you. You want to allow them to demonstrate to them exactly what they need to do, and then let them try it out themselves or do the task themselves while you give them feedback. And then also integration, allow them to maybe use that in a different way. Maybe cellular reproduction is not the best example of this. Maybe another example is something maybe more applied, like engine repair. So students, the task might be that there is an engine that's broken. There is, maybe there's something about the engine that needs to be replaced. And so you're going to activate their cognitive structures. So the task is really to replace that part in the engine. Maybe it's a belt on the engine or something like that that has to be replaced. So that's the task. The activation would be that you remind students about what their knowledge is of pulleys and belts and how they work within the structure of a car engine. And then demonstration would be to show them exactly how to replace the belt and the different concepts that relate to that and how those concepts relate to replacing the belt. The application then would be to allow them to actually have the practice of replacing the belt themselves and showing them or telling them how well they're doing at it and guiding them as they do it. And then integration might be that they might want to replace the belt on a newer car or a different car. And that would mean that they would have to apply the skills that they've learned to a different type of situation. So that would be an example of a task-centered learning experience that doesn't relate necessarily to technology, but you'll have to kind of apply it to technology. So some of the problems that students run into too is that they make tasks that are maybe not whole enough. They make tasks that are small instead of big. You kind of have to think big with this for what the task would be for your students. Another one is that sufficient application or practice is not provided for students. They don't get a chance to really do it themselves. That's a problem. And so you want to make sure that you account for that, allow students to try it out multiple times and to get feedback from you as they do so. And then finally, integration is often not used as well. So maybe they've learned the skill and they've been able to apply it and they've received coaching or feedback from you and been able to do application, but integration is missing where they actually get to try it in a different situation or get more practice even in a different type of situation. So that's one that a lot of students miss as well on this type of assignment. So hopefully that's clear. I applied it to a different area so that you have to kind of do the work of applying it to your area as you create this assignment. But that's about it for the class. I mean, this will be our last video. I'll just grade those assignments as they come in and give you grades, and that'll give you a final grade for the class. So good luck this week and carry on. Just one more week left.